What's up, and welcome into the 24/7 Sports College Basketball Show. I'm your host, Adam Finkelstein, and it may be August, but we've got an exciting show of hoops for you here today. Before we get into it, make sure you like, share, and subscribe here on the 24/7 Sports channel. Here's what we've got on tap for you this week. We're going to start to break down the high major conferences in college basketball. The reason we're doing that is because I bet you can't name all the programs in each of those high major conferences because of realignment and the fact that the Pac-12 is no more. So those schools are spread around to various conferences. We are going to break them all down. I'm going to do that with my man, Isaac Trotter, who I'm going to welcome into the show. Trotter, here's how we are going to organize this. You and I are going to start. We're going to do 3 conferences today, 3 conferences next week, and we're going to keep it simple at first. We're going to do full conference previews coming up in future weeks. But right now, we're just talking our favorite, and from a team standpoint, the best player in each conference, and then the best NBA prospect, because if you've been watching this show, you know those two are not necessarily the same thing. You ready for this?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, we are going to start with the ACC, and before we do that, we are going to talk about the teams that are in the ACC because, frankly, they're not all on the Atlantic coast. We are talking about Boston College, California, Clemson, Duke, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Miami, North Carolina, NC State, Notre Dame, Pittsburgh, SMU. They're not on the Atlantic coast. Stanford, they are definitely not on the Atlantic coast. Syracuse, Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Wake Forest. All right, now we've got that out of the way. Trotter, I ask you this. Who is your best team in the ACC this year?
Well, I'm really going out on a limb with Duke, right? I have them number 1 for me, partially just because of the defense. This is a group that has been top 16 nationally in defense each of the first 2 seasons under John Shire. And I look at this roster and go, man, they might be number 1. Like, this has a chance to be one of the best defenses in college basketball. Tyrese Proctor, we talk a lot about how his iffy offensive game, he is a phenomenal point of attack defender. Then you add in a guy like Sion James from Tulane on the wing. That's a terrific multi-positional defender. Caleb Foster, you have some size there at 6'5", 6'6". Cooper Flagg, maybe the best defensive prospect coming into college basketball this year. Kaman Malawak, a big-time rim protector. Malik Brown, one of the best defenders in the ACC last year at Syracuse. Like, I just don't know how this group stinks on that end. They just can beat you so many different ways. I think they're super switchable. I think they can play drop coverage. I think they could be aggressive. They could try to force turnovers. Like, you might see something new from them every single time based on who they're playing and the rotations that they're trotting out. Hey, they could even throw Mason Gillis in there. Was one of the best defenders for Purdue last year. Just a really stout 6'6" multi-positional wing defender. So this group is really, really fun defensively. And I know it's fun to talk offense. And, last year was the highest scoring season in college basketball that we've ever seen. But Duke is going to be nails defensively this season.
Yeah, I'm an offensive guy. I find that more entertaining. It's the more aesthetically pleasing part of the game. But I can't disagree with your logic. Shire has proven to be a really good coach, especially on the defensive end in the first 2 seasons. And he's got the personnel to take it to another level this year. But I am going with somebody a little different. You and I texted about this before the show, and I said, am I crazy that I think Wake Forest has got as good a chance as anyone to win the ACC this year? Obviously, Hunter Salas comes back. That was a huge thing for Wake Forest, but I am just as high in terms of impact next season on Cam Hildreth. I think that backcourt has a chance to be the best in the conference with Hunter Salas, Cam Hildreth. And then I also really like Davin Crosby coming from Alabama. I think he's got a chance to really find his groove as an under-the-radar transfer who could really flourish for Steve Forbes. I think Parker Fredrickson, 37% in 18 minutes from behind the three-point line last year. He gives them the requisite floor spacing. Tyler Johnson from Louisville, can he give them some added playmaking? We've talked about Omaha Blue joining the team, giving them that athletic defender and court coverage guy in the front court can really take them to new levels. Efton Reed had a really solid season last year at the 5 spot. And Steve Forbes is just one heck of a coach. So I think they've got the personnel to do it. I think Salas's return, although I'm not sure he will make a huge jump. I think he was really good last year. And if he can just make incremental strides this year, I think that's going to be enough for this veteran Wake Forest team to potentially challenge for an ACC championship this year.
No, I love it. I think Wake Forest is an easy top 20 team nationally, and they're certainly in the mix. And the one thing with them, Hunter Salas was elite from mid-range, elite at the rim, elite from three-point range last year, like just the perfect three-level scorer. Can he do all that with a bigger usage rate? That's my big question for Wake Forest in 2024, 2025.
I don't know if they'll have a bigger usage rate. I mean, it's going to be, we're not going to go down that. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole right now, but I don't think he has to have one. I think Hildreth is someone internally on that program that they view as vital to their success. And so it's going to be a little bit of a balancing act with both of those guys sharing some on-ball reps. And they've got collective size in the backcourt as well. But I digress. All right. The best player in the ACC is also your choice for the best NBA prospect. I don't think it's debatable who the best NBA prospect is, but why is Cooper Flagg the guy for you in both of those categories, best player and best NBA prospect?
Yeah, I feel bad about this one because honestly, RJ Davis, a returning All-American, like that should be this guy. But I feel like Flagg has a chance to be a generational type of player for Duke this year. And when you factor in the positional size and the two-way impact that he'll have, I give him a slight nod. And this could look really dumb in 6 months when RJ Davis is averaging 22 points a game and leading the country in scoring and is just a complete bucket every single night. But I just think the ability that Flagg has to impact basketball as a multi-positional defender, his playmaking, the shooting that's continued to grow, the ability in transition to get you easy buckets. Like, he's the queen on the chessboard. Like, you can just use him in so many different ways. Like, he can make Duke play small. He can make Duke play big. Like that type of luxury, like very few players have. And RJ is a phenomenal player. And Hunter Salas is, if he's the third best player in this league, that shows you how good the top end talent is in the ACC. But I'm rocking with Flagg for this one.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with you. I do want to get into Davis a little bit, but let me say this about Flagg. You made the chess reference, and you're right. There's 1,000 different ways you can utilize him, and he can impact the game on that end of the floor. Listen, I've talked about Cooper for years now. Everybody knows what I think. Best prospect in the class last year has right now. I think he is not necessarily a shoo-in, but the leading candidate to be the number one pick in next year's NBA draft. But I think the thing that is perhaps understated or not emphasized enough is exactly what was in that graphic. This guy's killer instinct is, to me, what makes him great. It's just as important as anything else. He's got this mentality about him that is just different. The way he attacks the game, the way he rises to the level of competition. He's an assassin. And I just think that that's really what's separates him. As I said, I think he's the early favorite to be the top pick in the draft. That is certainly not a hot take. I think that's pretty much the consensus at this point. Whether or not he becomes the best player in the ACC is going to be interesting to watch. And as we know from watching this show, I think that Caleb Foster has a chance to be Duke's leading scorer. And I think Cooper Flagg could still be the best player in the ACC and the number one pick in the draft because of his versatility and two-way impact. But let's get into RJ Davis real quick. Coming back for his 5th year at North Carolina, this is a player who has made significant strides in each of the past 4 seasons. I mean, he takes a big jump with each passing year. Last year, 21 points per game on 43, 40, 87% shooting. He also averaged 3.5 assists per game, 3.5 rebounds per game, and over a steal per game. So I don't think he gets enough credit for the totality of his floor game because this is what he does best. He's just a shot maker. And I'll tell you what, Isaac, I don't know if you got to see the Tar Heels live last year, but I did. And the thing you come away when you watch them is like, this guy's just got so much game. And it's going to be really hard. It's a different dynamic this year at North Carolina. They don't have the same presence in the lane. I do expect, as we've talked about last week, Elliot Cadeau to take a step forward. But I think RJ Davis at least deserves to be in the conversation. He was absolutely phenomenal last year as a senior. He's got a chance to be the best player in the ACC again this year.
Well, and the other underrated part about RJ Davis, he doesn't turn the basketball over. He has the ball a ton. I think he had just a 9% turnover rate last year with a super high usage rate, ton of pick and roll reps. Like, we've seen the playmaking. Like, the fact that he doesn't make mistakes is such an underrated part of his game. And we know when the late clock situations, like, it's a guard's game. College basketball still is a guard's game. and North Carolina might have the best guard in college basketball. That's a really real luxury that North Carolina has. And again, I think transition wise too, that's another underrated part of his game. Like Elliot Cadeau push-aheads for RJ Davis threes were one of North Carolina's best offenses last year. Like he was phenomenal in transition. That duo should be even better next year, getting you instant offense really quickly in the fast break. And that's why North Carolina's offense was so good last year.
Yeah, you can't talk about RJ Davis's ascension last year without giving Elliot Cadeau props. I think his entry into that lineup was huge. But again, another rabbit hole that you and I could go down and talk about for another hour, but that's not why the people are here, Isaac. All right, let's talk about the Big East. You know what I love about the Big East? They have the same conference they had last year, but let's look at the teams in it. Butler, Connecticut, Creighton, DePaul, Georgetown, Marquette, Providence, St. John, Seton Hall, Villanova, and Xavier. It makes sense. They're all kind of from, relatively speaking, the same part of the country, at least in this era of college basketball. And the East is actually somewhat relevant. So same drill. Isaac, who is your best team in the Big East? And this better be unanimous.
Yeah, I'm not overthinking this one. As much as I love what Xavier's done this offseason, I think the champs deserve number one here, and it's UConn, right? Just the combination of talent that they've added to this mix, keeping the coaching staff together is phenomenal. And this is a really unproven group, but I'm really bullish on what this big man platoon is going to be. Samson Johnson, all the intel on him this summer has been phenomenal. And Terrace Reed, the transfer out of Michigan, I think those two guys together are going to be absolutely terrific. They give you just a different dynamic for 40 minutes. Samson Johnson's super athletic, really like a rim runner. You can blitz him with ball screens. And then Terrace Reed, I think, will just be super physical, and you can play him in drop coverage. And he's been watching a ton of Adama Sanogo tape for years. Like that's the clone of the type of player that he wants to turn into. So we talk about the shooting. You know, they've added Aiden Mahaney. They have Hassan Diarra back. Like they have a bunch of skilled playmakers, but that big man platoon, I think, has a chance to keep UConn super relevant. Like they're kind of at the tip top of college basketball in like this big man platoon rage. And now a ton of teams are copying it, but UConn does it better than everybody. And I think that's going to be the case yet again this year.
Well, and they've got Alex Karaban back too. This is someone who I believe would have been drafted in June had he opted to stay in the draft, but now has a chance to play his way into the first round. And we covered that decision going all the way back to when you and I were in Chicago at the draft combine. His return, I think, gives UConn a true leader. And I was actually at one of their practices as they were wrapping up summer session. I will tell you, there is no sense of complacency there. I mean, the pace with which these guys practice, the intensity of not just how they do things, but what they're doing. I mean, from an offensive standpoint, the elaborate actions that they're already working on at this point in the summer, it was really impressive stuff. I think Karaban's going to be one of the best players in the country. I think we have a tendency in this day and age of college basketball to measure players by metrics or maybe even by counting stats. But Alex Karaban is someone who should be measured by wins. And when it comes down to wins, there's no one in college basketball who has won more games or had a bigger impact on winning in the last 2 years than he has. I expect he's really going to thrive, taking on even more of a leadership role this year as a junior, and really be at the forefront of that bid to three-peat. He is skilled, he is tough, and he is exceptionally smart. And that's really been the blueprint for the Huskies over the course of the last two national championships. All right. Interestingly enough, we are now going to talk about two non-Huskies for the best player in the conference. As I should say, I think Karaban is firmly in that conversation, but just for the sake of discussing some other players, you and I each went with somebody else. Who's your pick for the best player in the Big East Conference this year?
Yeah, this is a brutal conversation. I went with Kadari Richmond, who transferred from Seton Hall to St. John's. It's a very different type of style that he's going from. Seton Hall was really much of a grinded out team, really low pace team. St. John's, that wants to get up in your grill. They added Davon Smith out of Utah. And now a lot of people have questions about what Richmond and Smith will do together. I'm kind of bullish on the pairing. You know, I think Smith is going to be terrific in transition, getting instant offense, playing 3-on-3 basketball so much easier than 5-on-5 5, and Smith is a big part of that. And I think Richmond is going to give you a post-up hub in the half court. You can post him up. You can use him as a big jumbo initiator. He was terrific on the glass. And then defensively, he is a menace defensively. He can guard basically anybody, super sticky hands. We know how big of an impact turnovers are for Rick Pitino's team. Like, everybody is like kind of right now in defensive coordinators, like, are we a passive defense or are we aggressive defense? Like, with this person out, St. John's is going to be super, super aggressive. We know where Rick Pitino falls on that line. And I think what we're going to see from Richmond this year is just a special season. Like, he's a triple-double threat every time he walks onto the floor.
All right. Well, you said the word defense, and so I'm going to give some love to Ryan Kalkbrenner, the 3-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year. And so when we're talking about who's the best player, you've got to consider both ends of the floor. This guy has been, according to the coaches, the best defensive player in the league since 2021, I guess that is. Just an absolute anchor on the defensive end, 7'1", protects the rim. He's just the basis for everything they do defensively, but offensively, he's really made consistent strides. He's a 4-year starter who's now back for his 5th year. He turns 23 in the middle of the season this year, so he's experienced. He's experienced in that system, and Mac obviously runs a very intricate offensive system, so you need to be able to operate in it. This is a 7-footer who averaged a made 3 every other game last year, so we've seen the expansion of his skill set. And again, just defensively, he's on another level, especially with Donovan Clingan no longer in league. So Ryan Kalkbrenner is someone that I think deserves a lot of consideration for Player of the Year. All right, best NBA prospect. Who you got?
I went with Liam McNeely out of UConn. I just think that the size.
Welcome to the party.
There we go. I just feel like what we're looking for in the NBA is everything Liam does. Do you have size? Do you have IQ? Can you make plays for others? And can you shoot it? And like, if that type of just that's it right there. And so I just feel like this is a perfect fit for him to go to UConn. No disrespect to Indiana, but this fit at UConn is a lot less clunky than it would have been at Indiana. I think the off movement shooting that he brings to this group, the ability to make shots from the middle of the floor, all of that's going to play really well. I'm really bullish on him having a huge freshman year at UConn. Yeah,
he's going to prove all the doubters wrong, I think. As I said, I was up there. I think his summer he had a little bit of a rolled ankle, I think, that limited him a bit. But just seeing him live in person, he's very clearly stepping right in, expected to make an immediate and significant contribution. A year ago, I don't think many people believed the one and done talk would be legitimate, but I think it is going to prove to be very legitimate. Athletically, he's continued to evolve enough so that he is sufficient to be in that conversation. That was the big question. No one ever questioned his skill set. No one ever questioned the positional size, the shooting, the IQ. It was, hey, can he keep up athletically? Can he keep up defensively? I think the answer is going to be yes, and he's going to have every opportunity to play a big role there for the Huskies. Guy I want to talk about is Cam Jones at Marquette. I think we saw some real potential stardom for him last year, late in the season, especially when Tyler Kolek went out. How about this? He had 3 30-point games in the last month of the regular season. He averaged over 23 points per game in the NCAA tournament. This is going to be a vastly different Marquette attack. No Tyler Kolek, but also no Oso Ighodaro. They have Stevie Mitchell and Chase Ross back, but Cam Jones is going to be the primary guy this year for Shaka Smart. I also think he's going to benefit from increased floor spacing in the front court with Ben Gold, somebody who you've talked about in previous shows. I think he's got size that translates to the NBA level. I think he's got shooting that translates to the NBA level. And I think he's really fluid off the bounce with some on-off ball versatility. So I think he is someone that is going to play his way into a potential first round category, if you will, on our initial list of the draftables. All right, let's keep this thing moving. Let's talk about the Big Ten. Now, surprise alert, there's a lot more than 10 teams in the Big Ten, so let's look at exactly who they are. Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Maryland, Michigan, Michigan State, Minnesota, Nebraska, Northwestern, Iowa State, Oregon, Penn State, Purdue, Rutgers, UCLA, USC, Washington from the West Coast, and Wisconsin. It is way more than 10, but Isaac, out of those teams, who is your early favorite to call themselves the Big Ten champs?
I'm going to get this one wrong. You could ask 10 people. They could probably give you 10 different names. The gap between 1 and number 18 is bad. But, this is the offseason. Got to make bold predictions, and I'm going with UCLA. I think this is a group that's coming off of the worst season that Mick Cronin's had in 15 years. But I am really, really bullish on what they've done in the portal and the ability to keep guys and get guys better. We've seen a year 3 jump from guys like Tiger Campbell under Mick Cronin, and I think that's coming for Dylan Andrews as well. He is a junior point guard that only Trey Alexander attempted more off the dribble 2-point jumpers than Dylan Andrews last year. And when you head into the Big Ten, there's so many teams in the Big Ten that are playing passive defenses with a ton of drop coverage, and they want to leave the middle of the floor open. That's where Dylan Andrews does all his work. And then you factor in, the additions from the portal. Toby Johnson, phenomenal defender. Tyler Bilodeau, I think his pick and pop threat is just something different. He hit 33s last year. UCLA's big men combined hit 18. Like, this is different. Like, this whole roster that they have coming in is completely different. I still have some questions about them from a shooting perspective, but Sky Clark needs to shoot it. Dominic Harris needs to shoot it. Trent Perry, can he come in and be a guy that shoots it as well? And then this is also a bet on coaching, because I know that Mick Cronin teams play really, really hard. I know that they're going to bring it on the defensive end of the floor. And I think they've added enough talent at some of these different spots in the portal. It's just going to be such a different team than what they had last year. So in a wide open league, give me a newcomer, even if there are some concerns about, hey, like, they got to fly across the coast to play Purdue. Hey, they got to fly across the country to go play Penn State, stuff like that. Like, the other teams have to fly across the coast to go play UCLA too. So I think UCLA is going to be in for a huge, huge bounce back season.
Yeah, it's going to be a real logical trip when the UCLA diving team flies to Newark to face Rutgers. I'm sure everybody's looking forward to that. But I'm going to keep this on the West Coast. I want to talk about Oregon. I think they've got a chance to be really special, and it begins with player retention. KJ Evans and Jackson Shellstad, both returning for their sophomore seasons, 2 players that had a chance, I think, to hear their name called on draft night, and will have a chance to do so again in the class of 2025. I expect both of those guys, especially Shellstad. It's ironic. I think Evans is a better NBA prospect. I think Shellstad's going to be the best college player of the two. I expect him to take on a starring role, but I love the group of experience they are surrounding them with. TJ Mbamba coming from Villanova after 3 years at Washington State for his 5th year. You've got Brandon Angel, the grad transfer from Stanford. This guy's 6'8", 240, and his shooting splits last year, 57, 45, 82. Combine that with Nate Biddle, a skilled 7-footer. They're going to have a ton of floor spacing on that court. I expect KJ Evans to take a step forward. I think Jackson Shellstad is going to be one of the best guards in college basketball this year. So I think it's going to be Oregon. I mean, it looks like a great year in the Pac-12. I mean, the Big Ten, everybody. All right, Isaac, your best player in the Big Ten for this year. Who you got?
I didn't have to think long and hard about this one. For me, it's Braden Smith out of Purdue. I think a lot of people looked at Braden and kind of said, oh, he's like a byproduct of Zach Edey's brilliance. And maybe that was the case, but I think Braden's a baller. And you talk to anybody that played against him last year, they loved him. He's one of the best and most efficient pick and roll scorers in the country. And I love the way that he's improved his game. Like, his feel is off the charts. And we saw that right away as a freshman, but his pull-up jumper was a weakness as a freshman, and it became a big time strength as a sophomore. And now heading into his junior year, I think he's going to put it all together as just the top of the scouting report alpha for this Purdue team. So yes, Edey's gone, and yes, there's going to be a kind of a transitional period. And, is it Trey Kaufman-Renn in the big man spot? Is it Daniel Jacobson? There's all these questions about Purdue. I have zero questions about Braden Smith. Every time he walks onto the floor, he is an absolute killer, especially in late clock situations. And I have a feeling that he's going to have a huge, huge year. He's my Big Ten preseason player of the year.
I also think Miles Calvin's going to have a breakout year there, obviously to a lesser extent. Player I want to talk about, Peyton Sandford, someone else we covered, thought about going to the NBA draft, candidly did not play well at the draft combine. But if you followed Iowa over the years, the guys who come back, they usually benefit. Keegan Murray came back. He became a star. Chris Murray came back. He became a star. I think Peyton Sandford is the next player in that line. This is his 4th year in the program, 6'7" senior. He, too, has made a significant jump in each of his previous 3 seasons. Last year, 16 points per game on 45, 38, 91 shooting. Over 7 attempted 3-point shots per game, and he took less than 12 shots per game. So this guy hunts his looks from behind the 3-point line, but he's got a little bit more versatility. He's a better passer than people give him credit for. He's a much better rebounder, almost 7 boards per game. He's got to make strides on the defensive end of the floor for NBA scouts. That was a kind of a glaring red flag at the combine. But I think just in terms of who could be the best player in the Big Ten this year, I think Peyton Sandford is going to make a case to be in that conversation. All right, best NBA prospect. Speaking of Newark and the Very exciting diving contest between them and UCLA. Let's talk about the best NBA prospects in the Big Ten. We both went with somebody from Rutgers, but we've got different guys. You go first. Who are you picking?
Yeah, I just went with Dylan Harper just because I love the combination of size and 3-level scoring and playmaking. I think it's a guards game, and his type of game I think is going to be more Big Ten ready, especially this year. And I think he's probably in a good conversation to be that number 2 pick in the 2025 NBA draft. Just like that whole combination of a 6'6" playmaker who can handle it. I think they can play him off the ball a little bit as well. I like his off-ball cutting and what he can do kind of coming off pin downs and getting downhill to his left hand. Like, I just feel like you're going to be able to do a lot well with him. And so the fact that Rutgers has a Jeremiah Williams, they've added a Tyson Acuff, like he's not necessarily going to have the ball in his hands 24/7. I think that might be a good thing to unlock more of his numbers. So offensively, no questions about what he can bring to the table. I think he's the best pure combo guard in college basketball this year. And it's really cool that this is even a debate like at Rutgers, because I think Steve Peichel, everybody around the sport has a ton of respect for what he's built there. And it's going to be really cool to see the rack hopping. Like, I'm not calling it the Jersey Mike Center. It's the rack until future notice. Like, that's what it is.
That's fair. That's fair. Huge Dylan Harper fan, well documented over the years. Size, feel, combo, terrific length, terrific strength. Certainly agree with all that. But I do think Ace Bailey is a better NBA prospect. I think Ace Bailey, believe it or not, I think he may have a chance to be the number 1 pick in the draft. As I said, I don't think this is a foregone conclusion that Cooper just runs away with this. And that is not a knock on Cooper. That is a commentary about how high Ace Bailey's upside is. We are talking about a jumbo wing and the highest level athlete who made huge strides over the course of his senior year with the type of shot making you are seeing on the screen right now. Isaac, when this guy is playing well, he elicits Tracy McGrady comparisons. Now, there are some extreme highs and lows. He's going to have to improve his fundamentals. He's going to have to learn how to play in the flow. But from an NBA perspective, when they start analyzing upside, I just think Ace Bailey has as much of an upside as potentially anyone in this draft. And so that is, to me, why he's the best NBA prospect in the Big Ten and has a chance, I think, to be a top pick in the draft, if not, 2 or 3. So certainly someone that is going to generate a whole lot of NBA scouts on their way to Newark, along with his close friend, Dylan Harper. Isaac, my friend, we are going to do this again next week. We're going to look at 3 more conferences, or should I say 2 more conferences, and then the best of the rest. But as always, my man, thanks for doing this. Everybody make sure you check out Isaac's work at CBS Sports and 247sports.com. As always, we've got wall-to-wall team coverage, recruiting rankings, transfer portal updates, and most recently, the Summer Scouting Series. All right, with that, I'm going to welcome in 247 Sports' own Eric Bossi to help us break down the recruitment of the number 1 prospect in the country, AJ Dybantsa. Bossi, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me, man.
Hey, good to be here.
All right, now you spoke with AJ's dad very recently, so we've all seen the visits that are now very well publicized on social media, but walk us through what his plan is and what you've heard straight from his father.
Yeah, it's really interesting because obviously we've heard all kinds of speculation all summer about this school is the lead or this school is the team to beat. He transfers to Utah Prep, so BYU is heavy in the discussion. Certainly they're in the mix as one of his finalists, but speaking with AJ's father, he made it pretty clear that he's entering this process open to everyone and that everyone has a clean slate and equal footing. Now, I know everyone kind of rolls their eyes when they hear that, but again, we're talking straight from the horse's mouth here. So we have to kind of take dad at his word on this. So with Ace's dad. So it's going to be interesting. He starts the visits off next week at Kansas State, and then he goes to Kansas. And then after that, he's going to go to North Carolina, Alabama, Baylor, and BYU is the last visit in October. He's already been to Auburn, but now here's the thing. He's not going to be deciding until at least mid-February or so. So not only are we going to see official visits, I think there's a good chance that we could see Ace and AJ, dad and son, take some visits during the season to see teams play on unofficial visits, if at all possible. Now, obviously, AJ is going to have a busy schedule himself at Utah Prep, but when they can find a chance to get in and see some things, they are going to try and take some live look-ins on it. It's really an interesting deal. Like I said, they're going out of their way to say that things are on equal footing. And what's interesting here is that schools, even though they've made this top 7, are really just now being able to start their relationship with AJ. His father has handled the recruiting process to him up to the point. He said, I don't want him to have to deal with 70 or 80 coaches. I wanted to get down to the 6 or 7 that are really legitimate factors. And now he can start building those relationships with them. So the amount of direct contact that any coach has had with AJ has been fairly limited. So that does really put a lot of importance on these visits to establish a comfort level, to make a guy believe. And then when you start playing in the season, well, what you said on the visit better show with how you play.
All right, boss. Now you have and will continue to handle all of the reporting on AJ's recruitment, but I want to add some context in terms of just what I'm hearing behind the scenes, not from the family. You have the sourced reporting on that. I think the perception is that BYU is definitely firmly in the mix here. There's a couple of reasons for that. This is going to be NIL is going to be a factor in this recruitment. BYU is believed to have significant resources to be able to compete in that way. AJ has already made the move to transfer to a high school in Utah. So we assume for someone who's not planning on spending more than a year in college that he's not averse to staying an extra year to go to college in the state of Utah. So BYU certainly seems to me to have a very legitimate chance. You also mentioned 7 schools there, 5 of which are Nike or Jordan Brand by extension schools, 1 Adidas school in Kansas, and an Under Armour school in Under Armour. AJ is, please correct me if I am wrong here, Bossi, but he is currently a Nike sponsored and has a Nike NIL deal. That deal is set to expire before his freshman year in college would begin. So presumably he could sign with anyone if it coincided with the school he would choose for next year. I think that is another important factor to watch. But again, the thing for me is, aside from all the business considerations, which are now just a reality of the marketplace for top prospects like AJ, I think there's also got to be an idea of not just about monetization of the next year, but monetization of the next decade. Like, who puts you in the best position to develop both on and off the court, to handle everything you're going to handle in the NBA, to put yourself in position to be the number 1 pick in the draft? Not just AJ, but I think too many young people are only worried about where's the biggest NIL deal right now, instead of what place puts me in the best position to succeed long term. Too many people thinking about it in terms of the next 10 months instead of the next 10 years. Again, that I want to be very clear. I'm not speaking specifically about AJ when I say that. I'm just saying that all the top prospects, because NIL is no longer this thing that we don't talk about, it's an obvious consideration in this process. I think that all these kids who have options and who are going to drive big NIL type deals also need to be giving some consideration to what is the best place for me over the course of the next decade. But is it fair to assume that NIL and all those things are obviously sneaker deals and stuff like that are all going to be part of the consideration for AJ?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're a non-Nike shoe company and you have a chance at this kid who's putting himself in position to presumably the number 1 draft pick in 2026 and is very marketable, he's got a lot of personality, engaging guy, really good kid. Why would you not take a swing at things if there's an opportunity to be so? I believe his Nike deal ends in June, if I've got that correct. So that all factors in. And like you say, NIL matters not only in this recruitment and recruitment, but I think what people need to understand is this isn't just a matter of, just to throw numbers out there, if one program offers, say, $2 million and another offers $2,001,001, he's not going to the one that's $2,001,001. There's still going to be a very much factor of fit about showing, hey, here's our vision for you while you've got on campus. And then when they watch the games, backing that up. Because as you say, I think AJ and his family have a clear understanding of what's on the line potentially down the road. As much money as you can get now for AJ or any other prospect is certainly a nice thing, but you don't want that to impact potential much bigger dollars down the road. If you think you're going to be a number 1 draft pick, you want to make sure that you get somewhere where, you can be that number 1 draft pick and you cannot mess that up, because fall a couple spots in the draft, that makes a several $1 million difference in how much money you earn on that first contract. So, a couple $100,000 extra dollars for 1 year compared to possibly costing several $1 million over the next 4 or 5 has certainly got to be a consideration for anybody.
Yeah, I just looked this up. Here's the numbers. If you're the number 1 pick in the draft, it's 12.6 million at this past year. If you're the number 4 pick in the draft, it's 9.1 million. So for these kids worried about, and again, not specific to any one player, for these kids worried about where's the better NIL deal, the bigger money is 10 months down the road. So you have to have that long-term perspective. It's good to hear based on your reporting that they certainly do. Ebos, as always, thank you for your expertise. Everybody can find more of Ebos's reporting over at 247sports.com. As we said, we've got everything there, all the recruiting rankings, transfer portal coverage. Can find us 247sports.com. And then, of course, here on the 24/7 Sports channel for all of the shows. It is college football season, and our guys have you covered there. And, of course, if you've been watching, you know we've got all the live commitments for you here in both college basketball and football here on the 24/7 Sports channel. Until next week, thanks as always for watching.